Dogman thought I was a real Sasquatch. Dear Scary Stories NYC. When I was just out of college, I wanted to move to Austin, but I couldn't afford it. I ended up staying in a college town I won't mention in Wisconsin, and I extended my teenage years until I was about 32. That's when I met a woman who forced me to grow up. Don't worry, this all takes place while I was still very immature. In fact, this is the true story of how I almost never got a chance to grow up, because I got literally physically attacked by the Wisconsin werewolf. This is one of those lighthearted fun anecdotes that someone tells you that suddenly takes a left turn and flies off the bridge into the drink. It all started in such a fun way. So, I was friends with these guys who were in a band, and together we all went to see Gwar. This was the old days. It was the original Gwar. They already had an incredible stage show, which included a guy in a giant dinosaur costume coming on stage and being murdered with blood flying everywhere. It was pretty astounding, actually. So the guys in the band got all excited and started talking about how they wanted to make me a Bigfoot costume and have me become part of their stage show. I neglected to mention that I'm 6'5", which was really tall for that scene. I was feeling free that night, and I agreed that if they came up with a cool enough Bigfoot costume, that I would appear in it on stage during their shows. I mean, I have always secretly wanted to be a performer, but I'm very shy as well. This would be the best of both worlds, since I could be on stage, but I would be hidden the entire time behind the Bigfoot mask. So I want to make it clear that we were never intending to use this Bigfoot costume to hoax anyone. It was only for use on stage, where hopefully everyone would understand that it was part of the show and not a real squatch. I don't have the nerve to attempt a real hoax. I have too guilty a conscience. This was all meant in fun and not meant to confuse or trick anyone, so I was cool with it. The band got in touch with this early cosplayer who was an amazing dude. He had studied Hollywood techniques in monster costumes and was creating new ideas of his own to use in cosplay. Again, I'm not going to mention his name, but he has moved on to a different creative endeavor since that time. At any rate, he created for us a costume that was way beyond its era. It would still get a rise out of a crowd at a convention even today, I think, but at that time, it was almost beyond belief, fact, and fiction, if you know what I mean. You could tell almost immediately that it wasn't real for a few reasons. Like it had this grayish-bluish face, but it moved fairly well and I could walk around in it on these 18-inch stilts built into the lower parts of the legs and into the big feet. The effect it created was remarkable, and we went into rehearsals right away. So one night we realized we should take some publicity photos of the band with me in the Sasquatch costume, and we got a local photographer to come help us out. We met by the log church on Route 8, just because it was a landmark we all knew, and then we all piled into the photographer's station wagon and drove west. I don't remember exactly where we were, but we just randomly chose a place where there was some grass off the road and a tree line behind us. They had to walk me like 30 seconds to get back to the tree line, and the grass was high. I was in my Bigfoot costume without the head on, and they were guiding me because it was hard for me to see anything directly beneath, and I couldn't really tell where I was placing those big feet. You have to remember I was nearly 8 feet tall on those stilts, and once I put the giant Bigfoot head mask on, I was literally over 8 feet up in the air. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, and I was hoping to remain upright throughout this photo op. Once they strapped me into the headpiece, which also had a built-in helmet for me in case I actually did fall, I was locked into that costume. I don't know if I even could have gotten out of it by myself if I had tried, since I always had assistance both getting into and out of it. This is how I first heard about method acting and other acting techniques and theories. I had to basically find ways to stay in character until someone helped me to take the Bigfoot mask off. I began to study performance artists and comedians like Andy Kaufman, who was a genius and a huge inspiration. I began to think of myself as a Bigfoot performance artist, and we weren't even out of rehearsals yet. As we took those publicity photos, me threatening the guys, and them pretending to be scared or miming out their attacks on me for the camera, I felt a sense of excitement for the future that I never felt before in my life. When someone tackled me from behind, and I fell face forward into the tall grass, I was actually laughing as I fell. I thought it was one of the guys in the band, and I was having fun with whatever happened. But when I landed, I heard screaming and shouting all around me, even as I found it hard to get my face up out of the dirt. The costume was somewhat inflexible in some areas, and I found myself eating dirt for some time before even being able to tilt my head to one side a bit. There was also someone on my back who was taking the joke way too far. Whoever they were making it hard for me to breathe by standing alternatively on my belly or on my chest. I couldn't shake them, and they were on the verge of causing me to pass out. The shouting continued, and eventually the weight was lifted off me. I found the guys in the band removing my helmet mask and helping me to sit up, while everyone was still shouting and sounding pretty scared. There was a lot of cursing and swearing, and people were picking up rocks off the ground and throwing them. When I looked in the direction the rocks were flying, I saw something that is the reason you're listening to me in the first place. I saw a genuine, real-life cryptid, not a guy in a costume like me. I was looking at something I had no idea about beforehand. Some of the guys called it a werewolf, or the Wisconsin werewolf, but I saw it as some kind of mutant dog monster. I wasn't thinking about wolves, in other words, but I don't know why. I do suppose it was wolf-like, but dogs do descend from wolves. It stood up, but not like a human exactly. It had this bent-over posture and snarling face that seemed to be attempting to scare all the guys at once. This creature felt so certain of itself that it assumed a group of 7 healthy young adult men were no match for it by itself. There were some obvious reasons it might feel that way, to be fair. The creature was taller than me. I mean, the real me, out of my costume. It had to be in the range of 6'9" or 10 to maybe an inch or so over 7 feet. I was sitting on the ground looking up, so that might be off, but it scared me how tall this canine man was. I would say Canine Man is a really good descriptive name now that I come to think of it. I think that's better in this case than Dogman, because the others saw it as a wolf, and I saw it as a dog. We could all agree that it was canine, though, and it stood on 2 legs. The creature had a head like a cross between an Alaskan husky and a Tyrannosaurus rex. I mean, imagine a husky with giant rows of monster fangs, like a row of fat daggers in a way oversized head. The snout was long, and that extends the Tyrannosaur comparison. The eyes looked cruel, although we were seeing it in a moment of extreme agitation. The ears were up on top of its head, and they were triangular dog ears, like on a husky or a wolf or a German shepherd. The eyes glowed, and they changed colors at one point. I had at first thought they were reflecting light back from somewhere, but when they changed colors, that blew my mind. I mean, I don't think I have ever heard of a mammal or marsupial that had eyes that lit up from within. I know there are sea creatures like that, but not something as big as a man that's covered in fur. This creature sure seemed to have bioluminescent eyes, though. I'm not saying that's definitely what I witnessed, but I am saying it sure looked to be lit from within, at first by white light, then by amber light, and finally by a bright red eye shine when it seemed most angry and upset. I remember in my mind's eye what I saw in front of me as if it had happened yesterday. The creature had bent legs. I mean, canine hind legs used as the only legs, but they were far thicker boned than your typical dog hind legs. They were clearly designed to be its only legs. This was a creature as bipedal as a human, although in a different way, with a different center of gravity and a different means of balance and locomotion. We humans don't have tails, and so we balance differently than this creature did. We just do. It's hard for me to explain, because I'm a layman and not a doctor or a biologist, but even in my memory, I remember how he crouched differently, stood up differently, and so forth. His various postures were always threatening in each instance. I can honestly say that everything this creature did was frightening. Not artificially, but genuinely and naturally threatening. He felt only loathing toward me and toward my friends, and he didn't want us to exist any longer. The beast communicated that as clearly as if he had typed it out and double-spaced it. Now I wish I had a photo of this Bigfoot costume to show you, because although it was magnificent and breathtaking in its day, the helmet mask itself was not designed to be realistic looking. In fairness to the Dogman, however, from the rear, all you saw was something bipedal, 8 feet tall, and hairy, with a pointed head and big giant feet. From the rear, I probably really did look like an honest-to-God Sasquatch, and it was from behind that the Dogman snuck up and pounced on me. Would he have attacked me if he had seen the mask from the front? Maybe he still would have. But from behind, even Dr. Jeff Meldrum might have been confused for a brief moment. Again, the costume was built to be viewed from the front on stage, not from behind in the woods. But these publicity photos sure seemed like a great idea at the time. So there I was, with my butt on the grass, watching this dog-headed ape man freak the heck out overhead. The photographer was in front of all of us, waving a big fallen tree branch in the direction of the dog wolf's face. He was the only one protecting us at that point, although the band were gathered around me closely. I wanted them to help me up so that we could go back to the station wagon, but they wanted me to stay down until that Dogman left us all alone, which didn't look like it was ever going to happen. The canine man grabbed the branch out of our photographer friend's hand and threw it away. Then he glared at each of us in turn, his nostrils flaring. The guys resumed throwing rocks and pebbles at the thing as it began walking, step by step, toward me. As I said before, its eyes glowed first white, then amber, then bright red, as it seemed to have some negative intentions in mind for me. I think it thought I was a real Bigfoot. From behind us came a warbling sound, but only for a second or two. A police car was clearly parked back there, and decided to briefly cue us in, that it was watching the scene. I turned to look at the vehicle back on the road with the officer seated inside looking back. Then I turned back around to see what the Dogman's reaction was going to be to this, and I couldn't even see him any longer. He had run back into the bushes. The guys grabbed me under my armpits and helped me get back on my feet and heading back toward the road. I remember asking the photographer if he got any pictures of the monster, and he seemed surprised at the question. I took that as a no. I think the guy was only concerned with saving my life. I don't think he ever thought of himself in that situation. I have to admit, if I could get a photo of a real cryptid attacking someone, I'd probably snap a couple of shots first and then help the victim out second. But this photographer was, and probably still is, a better man than I am. If he had taken some photos, I might not have survived the attack. These are the nature of the trade-offs that life sometimes hands you. It wasn't only the photographer that saved my life either. It's a good thing the band felt protective of me. Or, at least protective of their Bigfoot costume. If they hadn't gathered around me when I fell, putting themselves in between me and my attacker, I don't want to think about what might have happened. To me, I mean, not the suit. That got torn up anyway, but if it got any worse, it would have been my blood staining the fur, not the blood of a Sasquatch. As it turned out, we never got to use the Bigfoot costume in even one live performance. Once the band encountered that Dogman, only bad luck followed them. nobody could afford to repair the suit, so it went on the back burner. Then the guy who wrote all the songs got divorced and had to get a day job to pay alimony to his wife that he couldn't afford. The band sort of fell apart quickly after that, as guys either got into other bands or found other things to do with their days. See, Guar was able to tour and could therefore afford extravagances like elaborate stage costuming, but these guys, my friends, they hadn't broken out of their own hometown yet. So the Sasquatch thing that they were attempting was really beyond their means. I don't even know who has possession of the costume these days if it still exists, but I'm pretty sure it was never repaired. I also never got to see any of the photos of myself in the costume either. The bad luck seemed to have mostly avoided me, but I moved to the West Coast soon afterward. We all kept in touch for a few years, but when I dropped off of Facebook and Twitter a few years back, I lost touch with them all. They used to joke that I moved to Northern California to be with my own kind, and they always insisted that I was really of partial Sasquatch ancestry. When you're tall, you have to accept that people are going to make these jokes. You just hope they're meant in a warm way, like my old buddies in that band so many years back. I hadn't even thought much about those times for a while, but my son sent me the link to your episode about a Bigfoot and a Dogman and asked me as a joke if that was my story you were telling. I realized then that my story actually fits in with yours because that creature who attacked me, it very well might have been a Dogman. In fact, I think it was. And the fact that it came out of the woods into a clearing filled with adult human males and attacked me anyway indicates that it had a deep hostility toward anything that looked like Bigfoot. I mean, maybe these two species really are mortal enemies. Possibly they are fighting over the same resources and food. Maybe they literally are each attempting to remove the other from the picture. Maybe my old-time story from my youth is actually a precursor to some of these more recent stories that people are sending you. Maybe the war between the species started long ago, but is only becoming noticed by humans more recently. Maybe this is signaling to us that the creatures, both of them, are multiplying, even as wilderness and resources dwindle. That's not going to bode well, as if this is true, they will increasingly be forced to venture further and further into and around human settlements in order to locate the resources they need for survival. After all, I personally experienced the deep loathing that the Dogman has for Bigfoot without even realizing it for decades. I think it's important to note that Dogman thought I was a real Sasquatch. Hey guys, our superfan and friend of the channel, Kathy Barrickman, a really sweet and kind person who has supported us for years, is going into surgery tomorrow, if you're watching this on the first day of release. I mean, she's going in Friday, June 10th, to be clear. This is kind of a serious surgery, but I'm hoping we can all send as much positive and healing energy as we can to our Kathy. I'm hoping to get a second episode out this evening or in the morning, and I'll be asking you all again to please send prayers or positivity or good luck or however it works in your own personal world. Let's please all hope together that the doctors and nurses are on top of their game and that they're going to do things that help Kathy to mend and be healthy again. Even if you don't believe in any prayer or positivity kind of stuff, I can assure you that it feels better to send positivity than negativity. So do it for yourself. Be greedy, and include our Kathy Barrickman in your prayers. It might help, and it shouldn't hurt. It's a shame when bad things happen to good people, and Kathy has never been anything but good to us at this channel. She's a big reason we're even still around, so please consider sending her your kind thoughts and prayers to help her get through this time. And now for something completely indifferent, our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.